All right, everybody, welcome back to the Millennial Sales Podcast, episode 237. This is the show where young salespeople come to learn the craft of sales, to get better at it, to sell more, to make more money, to get promoted, to be more fulfilled in their job, to find the next job, whatever it is. We're on the path together, and the show can help you get there. If you want to show any love to the show, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. Is probably the best place. Tom Alemo, Tommy Tahoe on other social media like Twitter and Instagram as well. One quick note before we get to the sponsors and then we get to the content. I'm doing this cool thing with Dooley before the end of the quarter, which for me is June. Share your best end of quarter story. I have a post from last Thursday on LinkedIn that is sharing a crazy end of quarter story that I had, where I emailed Mark Cuban cold and got a response within about 3 minutes. So share your story, the best one, biggest win, craziest loss, funniest thing that happened, as voted by people will get free access to Dooley, which is a really cool sales tool, sales platform. You also get a guest spot on this podcast. So it's a win-win for everyone involved. You can head over to my post, let us know what your craziest story is. Love to hear that from you. Got a super good episode for you today. Before we get to Will Allred, I'm going to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. So first up is Gong.io. Gong, the #1 revenue intelligence platform, the best sales invention since sliced bread. It's changed my game. That's why I went to work there. I use it every single day, obviously. And it's just really amazing hearing from our customers, CROs, VPs of sales, sales reps, BDRs, customer success teams, marketers that want to hear the voice of the customer, that want to develop themselves and get coached and improve their skill set. And so if any of that is interesting to you, you can go to Gong.io. You could hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll point you in the right direction with someone as well. Our second sponsor here is Postal.io. So Postal helps you to send gifts to customers or partners or prospects. And instead of doing something that's kind of cheesy or canned, you can get very personal and very personalized with it. And it could come from the brewery across town or the local florist to really stand out with that customer. So I use that to send gifts to customers, to send things to former podcast guests or other people in my life. And so you can check them out at postal.io. They're also doing something cool that if you go to Apple Podcasts and you hit a 5-star review for this podcast, send that to me on LinkedIn, you get a free Starbucks gift card. So you get a free iced tea or coffee cake or venti cold brew or whatever it is that you're into. All you got to do is leave a review, send that to me, and we'll give you the Starbucks gift card by June 30th. Okay, so give some love to Gong, give some love to Postal. Hit me up on social media, all that good stuff. Let's transition. Let's pivot over to today's conversation. I've got my man, Will Allred. This is a great conversation. The first one that I've had with someone that was on their honeymoon that wanted to come on the podcast. And so we chatted, and Will shares his story of starting off in sales at Northwestern Mutual, which I think more than a few listeners probably either know what that is, know someone that did it, or did it themselves, selling life insurance, which is a tough gig. He talks about the founding story of Lavender, how he met his co-founder, how they pivoted to focus on salespeople during COVID, and essentially really talk about towards the end, Lavender helps you write good emails, the best emails that you can quickly. And we talk about what some of those characteristics are and how they build the software and how you as an SDR, as an AE, as a sales manager can write better emails for your customers and prospects, right? And that's the business we're in. A lot happens on phone calls, a lot happens on Zoom calls, but a lot of shit happens on email. Negotiation sometimes, unfortunately, obviously prospecting, moving deals along, getting calls scheduled, fighting objections. You wish that you could do it all on a call, but oftentimes it happens over email. So Lavender is a cool tool to help you do that. And Will was super willing to kind of share the background of that and what they're using to score as good emails and use the tool to get better. So without further ado, let's get straight into my conversation with Will Allred. Let's go.
All right, Will Allred, the first guest out of 230 plus that is joining the podcast from his honeymoon. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you having me, and yeah, I'm glad to take a break from vacation to chat with you about all things sales, emails, etc.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, congratulations
Thank you.
on taking the leap. I am an engaged man myself, so preparing for that step. So yeah,
Kudos.
congrats on making the move.
Well, hey, man, I'm looking forward to you joining me on the other side.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this and excited to get into this with you. I'm curious, just like maybe the audience can get to know you a little bit. Since you just got married, let's talk about it. Like, when did you meet your wife? How long were you guys together?
I met my wife a little over 4 years ago now, and it's funny. She was joking with me because my work anniversary with my co-founder popped up on LinkedIn, and she had asked a question about how long we had been working on it, and I was like 3 years. She goes, "Great, that means we've been doing this for 4."
That's how she remembers how long it's been. There's that year before, and then there's in like the last three.
Yeah, yeah. She's been patient.
That's funny. It's interesting though. I know we are just meeting now, so I'd hate to just like assume this on you, but I can speak from personal experience that having a strong partner has allowed me to do a lot better professionally and focus and expand in ways that I didn't think that I was previously. I'm curious if that resonates.
uh 10 trillion times over. It's one of those things that I don't think people talk about enough is, having a, wonderful partner in life. My now wife has been a fantastic cheerleader, supporter of everything that I've been doing over the past few years. And so, don't think any of this would have been possible without her.
Yeah, it can't be overstated. I'm curious to learn about the origin of you getting into the sales world, and I know you've had a couple different companies that you've started over the years. I saw on LinkedIn something about like Northwestern Mutual. Was that the start in the insurance world, or
Oh
what?
man, that was such a dark time in my life. I was in summer classes at Carolina, working at Northwestern Mutual selling life insurance, and everyone that I could get a hold of worked in the financial services industry already, and so they
Mm.
knew what I was selling, and so I like failed miserably in that role, like right out of the gate. And I took the mindset. It's interesting. It's probably a mindset that's helped me long term, but I took a mindset of just like, I'm not going to try to sell anyone anything. I'm just going to get to know people, learn about what they're up to. And, if there's an opportunity that I could potentially help someone, so be it. At the time, I didn't have anything of value to add to the conversation, but that was the mindset and the approach that I took to things. And I think that's actually carried through. I actually took a break from sales after that. Yeah, I had an internship the summer after at a company called CEB, which is now part of Gartner, where I was cold calling all day, and like I I didn't do terrible at the job. Had a really great mentor, a guy named Dan Solly, who gave me some great valuable lessons on like how to approach sales and being, casual, friendly, don't overthink it. I remember he pulled me aside one day and he goes, "You want to see the outreach template that's done the best for me in my entire career?" And I was like, "Sure," because they've been training us up on like all these different things we had to write out, and it was very complicated, and like, still not totally sure what they sell, but his highest performing outreach was an email that just said, "Hey, some colleagues of yours told me how impressive like your resume was, and I wanted to connect with you about what we're doing with other thought leaders like you. And like, yeah, that he said got a response like almost half the time. Wasn't even like personalized, wasn't templated or anything. He's just like, he was just like sending it, go, send, go. And he'd use the same like script on a cold call and it worked for him. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I went into consulting and forgot all of those valuable lessons in life and began to overcomplicate things again. For eventually meeting my co-founder who, yeah, had a really strong career in sales up to the point that we met. He had been working on an ed tech company. You know, we met at a hackathon, and after that weekend, when we won the hackathon in Atlanta, we spent 2 years building a customer data platform, and that, you know, it had a lot of great potential. COVID probably did us a favor in, you know, killing our pipeline off. And so we had to get smart about what we were doing, and we pivoted the business into what's Lavender today. So that's
What
a high level of where I've been as far as sales.
Yeah. Oh, there's a few things I wanna dig into, and we're gonna spend a lot of time on Lavender. But I'm curious, like, what Northwestern Mutual is. I had an interview for there, and I had sold Cutco the year before in college, and so when they're telling me this thing of like, kind of the pitch, I'm like, I just did this with knives. I can't go back to all the people that I know that I just sold $1,000 worth of knives to and go sell however much of life insurance. It's not gonna work. So I got it. I got
yourself with one of these Cutco knives.
Yeah, exactly.
I've now got the full value play.
Exactly. Exactly. So it didn't pan out, but I'm curious what drew you to that world. Was that just the first internship / job you could get, or like was there a specific reason?
I had interned in private equity the summer before. It was a family friend who, you know, agreed to let me just basically sit alongside and learn as a silent observer after my freshman year in college. And got to see some really cool acquisitions, got to help them source some potential, you know, companies to go talk to. The thing I got interested in there was like the financial services industry as a whole. And so, you know, what a great way to cut your teeth than to sell, you know, the products that are coming out of that industry. I struggled with it. And yeah, this is probably more just a byproduct of I didn't have the maturity at the time. But yeah, I struggled with, you know, selling something with a reputation, selling something that I didn't have like a full, you know, conviction behind. And so like I think that was probably a big part of why I just like it didn't work out. I was lured in by the promise of you can actually make some pretty good money selling in that world, especially as a college student. I had a friend who had like come out of the summer with like a fat 10K commission check, and I was like, oh wow, that's the ticket. That's a great place to be. And so I got excited about that, but I just like I never had the motivation behind the product. It wasn't that it's not a good product. It's just, you know, I wasn't like thrilled to wake up every day and sell people life insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you know, years later met your co-founder at the hackathon, okay, I'm going to just play the stupid card for a second because this is a real question for me that I don't know the answer to. Like, you go to a hackathon. Why are you going to a hackathon? What do you even do there?
So I had been working on a side project called, I called it Yovo. And it's honestly kind of similar to what you guys are doing at Gong today. I actually remember having a conversation with a product manager over at SalesLoft about what I was working on. And he was like, you should look at Gong. They're doing some cool stuff here. But I was really interested in like finding that, like, you talk to a bunch of founders who are like non-technical, and like the first thing they're like talking about and stuff is like, got to find that CTO to help you build something. It's not actually the correct approach, but yeah, I was convinced that I could go to this event and find a developer to work with. What I ended up finding was a non-technical co-founder who's been a fantastic person to learn from, work with, and yeah, I couldn't be happier to have spent the last 3 years grinding together. But yeah, I went into the experience. I've been working on this idea. I've been doing like the sales side of it, kind of hoping that I could find a lead that would pay for what I was hoping to build.
Right.
And he came up and he presented this idea that I had actually lived. He presented the notion of, hey, when a marketer is going and designing campaigns, a lot of what they put out there is guesswork. A lot of what they put out there is, informed by their gut, not necessarily by human psychology. It's a lot of like stereotypical persona work. What if we used personality insights, neuroscience driven insights to design campaigns to the way people think? The first step in that is create a customer data platform that can segment people by these different persona,
Mm-hmm.
these truer persona. I had been working in consulting. Um, I worked for a consulting shop, boutique firm in Atlanta called Top Right, former Apple, McKinsey execs who have put together some awesome project work for everyone as big as like PBS, CenturyLink, down to like marketing technology startups and smaller nonprofits. So I got to cut my teeth with some really cool clients in that world. Um, we worked in the system of story strategy system. So create what the brand story is, really get a sense for who they are, design a strategy of how we're going to take that to market, and then operationalize it. And so my
Mm-hmm.
job was like I essentially ran all things operationalizing, designing the tech systems, putting them into place. And so I had lived a lot of that guesswork that my now co-founder was talking about. And so I was stoked to just like dive into that problem. I had a ton of contacts that we could reach out to over the course of that weekend. Um, and so we just dove in and, we really enjoyed working together. I think over the course of that weekend, we probably slept a collective 3 hours. Uh, and so like um, we won the competition, and, Will and I like dove in head first right after that. We ended up meeting our CTO about a year later. But yeah, it was a really cool thing to be a part of. One of the things that like the biggest takeaway that I got from working on that product was people don't care about what you do. They don't care about your science. They don't care about any of that. We had this like aha moment in uh, like January of 2020. So like pre-COVID, but we were working with some direct consumer brands, and one of them finally turned around. They were like, I actually don't want to use your product at all. I like the fact that it gets me results, but like, how can I spend less time in your product? And it was like, wow, okay. Well, what would you like it to do? Like, what, like, just talking to them, like, what do you want to see from this? And they're like, honestly, like, I don't care about the segments. It's extra work for me. What I care about are like my KPIs. What I care about are what I'm getting measured on. I have to
Mm-hmm.
return on ad spend. And I was like, well, we've got all these content like analytics tools that we've been working on, based on that feedback of I don't really care about the segments. I don't know how to use it. Why don't we just run a simple correlation between your return on ad spend and these content metrics?
Mm-hmm.
So we did that. We put some new ads in place, and about a week later, they had doubled their return on ad spend. And it was like, okay, let's focus on what they seem to care about. What's your return on ad spend today? Have you like looked at any of the like analytics within your content itself? And let's see if we can turn this into a product. We had some awesome pipeline within the automotive world. Um, we had some awesome pipeline within direct consumer world as well as the agency world. COVID hit, and it was basically like this like pause. Everyone was like, no, we're not going to spend on advertising right now. We're not worried about optimizing our return on ad spend because we're not increasing our ad spend. So like we're slowing these things down. So this isn't something we're going to invest in. And so my co-founders and I were in the entrepreneurship lab up at NYU. Our CTO went to NYU, graduated in 3 years. He's freaking brilliant. And we're chatting about it. And my Will, he is reading TechCrunch, and he's like, check this out. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is shutting down support for Gmail. And we were like, oh, that's an interesting like opportunity, probably like make some cash flow out of our data connections that we've been using to run these customer segments. Just kind of recreate it. Then I chimed in. I was like, why don't we throw the content analytics on the backside and just tell people if they're writing a good email or not? And like that was the initial product. We showed it to about 8 people. The 8th person was actually the angel investor who funded the entire pivot, and we were off to the races after that. And then we had to figure out who we were building it for because we had a cool product and no one to necessarily focus on, which is never where you want to be as a founder. So we're like, okay, we've got like 3 months of runway. How do we figure out who actually needs this? And so I still remember I like reached out to, I don't know if you call it like the start of COVID, like a bunch of folks at companies like Airbnb and stuff got laid off. I reached out like one-to-one to like every single one of those individuals. And I was like, I think this could be helpful for job seekers. What do you think? Got like mixed reviews, went after HR, recruiting, went after customer success. One of our like first demos was actually with a like senior VP at Microsoft who was like, this sounds really cool. And we're like, cool, it only works in Gmail. And he was like, well, obviously we use Outlook.
Yeah.
But we kept grinding, and it actually was Nick Bennett over at Alice now. At the time, I think he was somewhere else. But he posted a review of our product to LinkedIn, and all of a sudden a bunch of salespeople started signing up, and then they started talking about it. And then we had a marketing intern at the time, one of about, I think in all, we had like 20 something interns over that course of that summer. Just something I can dive into. But we had a marketing intern who was like, you guys should just start posting to LinkedIn. Maybe focusing the content towards salespeople. And so that like fed the machine. And we spent the next 3 months after that focusing product development towards like a sales use case. And I think we're coming up now on what's probably going to be one of our biggest product releases, in the sense that every week you'll start to get like coaching tips based on what's actually working for your particular emails. You'll get recommendations based off of what's actually driving higher response rates within your emails this week. We're doing some of that. We're also doing some interesting NLP stuff around like automatically summarizing emails, which has some interesting application for like AE SDR handoffs and keeping managers up to date. But the idea is to just be like the most helpful inbox assistant possible for salespeople now.
Yeah. So walk me through a little bit for folks that maybe aren't super familiar. Like they might have used a tool like Grammarly or something like that helps with like punctuation and spelling and things like that. I haven't used Lavender, but my thought is that it's kind of like a 4.0 version of that, where it's like really coaching a lot more specifically. It's probably offensive to even use the Grammarly name, that wasn't a comparison, but maybe just like as a reference point.
I think about a good sales email, right? You're gonna have some correct grammar. You're gonna be correct, right? But there's also the factors of being concise, being considerate of the other person, being, um, really leaning on that consideration piece. I mean,
like the tone.
yeah. Because I mean, if you think about Grammarly, it gives you a very general swath, and it doesn't necessarily help you with the things that are going to drive reply rates. One of the biggest killers for reply rates is this complexity score. And so my co-founder and I harp on this all the time, which is 70% of the first drafts that go through our system. And I sort of view that as a statistical sample of 70% of all emails are written beyond this 10th grade reading level. It's not that, Tom, I know you could read beyond a 10th grade reading level. Yeah.
Let's hope.
Right. It's your prospect does not care to read your email beyond a 10th grade reading level. They don't have the attention span. They're not paying attention to what it is that you want to talk about. And you're an interruption in their day. And so you have to keep it stupid simple so that you can actually break through that, caveman filter that they have when they look at your email and they're like, how do I, go through my inbox triage, and how do I, quickly categorize this for what it is, make a decision about it, and either respond or move on. And so, you guys have done some awesome research around like interest-based CTAs, and it's there's some reasons for why that works beyond just like it's not pushy and stuff. It's simple and easier to reply to. Mm-hmm. Just like providing a specific date versus asking how their calendar looks. If you think about like, if you ask me like how my calendar looks, it's a stressful question because I immediately start thinking of my calendar and I'm like, oh God, I don't know. I'm busy, right? Yeah. And so like just saying like, is this helpful is a very simplistic yes or no. It reduces that like cognitive load threshold that somebody's going through. So that complexity thing is something that we harp on pretty hard, mostly because it's right now one of the top drivers for reply rates that we've seen.
And I'm curious, do you look past reply rates in terms of like what the sentiment is of the respondent?
Exactly. We do. That was one of the key things when we were designing our system was how do we optimize for not just getting a response, but getting a positive reply. Because I could tell you that I have your fiance captive, and like you'll be like, okay, what do you want? It's not necessarily positive, right? So like taking the thoughtful approach of like how do you actually drive deals to close? I mean, one of my favorite things to hear feedback from folks using our software is not that they're getting more replies. It's that they're getting more positive replies, and they're getting more positive replies faster. So it doesn't take, the 12th email within a cadence. Max Alschler over at Outreach. Yeah, he was on I think it was a podcast or a webinar that they were hosting the other day. And he was talking about their cadences, and he's like, if you don't get them by like the 5th touch point, you're not really going to get them. So like in my mind, it's like, okay, well, if you're not going to get them after the 5th touch point, why are we sending them, 12 different touch points? Why don't we just optimize this first 5 to get it right?
Yeah. I'm curious, have you seen, you mentioned like years and years ago, a mentor shared like what that template was that was really successful, that was not seemingly customized at all. And maybe even a lie, by the way, because he didn't back channel. It was maybe even a lie because he didn't back channel people asking about their resume. So
it was a total. It was like he literally just like threw it out there. But like, have you? The world of sales has changed, right? And you can't get away with some of the stuff you used to. No, that's a funny one. But where are you going with that?
I was curious if something that I'm a pretty big follower of John Barros, and he talks a lot about customizing, kind of like the first line, or customizing for the persona versus each individual based on how you can kind of scale that out. I'm just curious if you've seen any trends like that. I don't know if you're looking at things on the macro, but I'm just curious from a sales perspective, if you've seen any data or tracking any data about something like that.
Yeah. So the average amount of time that somebody's going to spend reading your email is about 12 seconds. And so like if you're looking at word count, how long it is that like, your actual writing is, what that shows you, most of those emails are going to be in that 100 word count range. It goes much longer than that 12-second time span. And it's not that people just aren't reading emails, it's that people skim. And so that first 2 lines are really going to dictate whether or not they take the time to read the rest of the note. Even if they do take the time to read the rest of the note, like how deeply are they reading the rest of the note? Kind of gets back to that simplicity thing. Like you spend all this time putting all these complex measures in, and then they don't actually remember half of it. So the first line thing is absolutely true. It's also massively impactful as far as open rates. So there's been some really cool research done around open rates and personalization regarding those first lines. So the big reason we all know to keep your subject lines between 2 to 3 words, keep it short, right? The thinking there is, it's not that like a long subject line is all of a sudden unattractive. It's that you're trying to save room for the preview text. The preview text is where the money's at, because you can actually show that person that you took time to write them a note. And so when you look to see open rate data, you could personalize around the person, the company and the role that they work in, and the industry as a whole, like industry based statistics, like folks within health tech are dealing with the following, right? As far as open rates go, the more personal you get, the more opens you get, but you have to blend it into the things that are relevant to them and what they do at the company, or else you're not going to get the replies. When you only focus on the personal, you don't get the replies. What gets the replies are these things that tie back to the company and the industry trends that they're dealing with. And so when I look at, I've started to do a lot of these like one-on-one coaching things, sort of like a wild hair idea where we were kind of just like talking about it internally, and I was like, what's a good litmus test to like see if this is as big of a problem as we think it is? And I just like posted my Calendly link, and I was like, hey, if you want some email one-on-one help, like happy to do it. And I ended up blowing up my calendar for like a 4-week period. But seeing a lot of like how folks are trying to do that, they focus on the wrong things when they're getting into the personal aspects of an individual, right? It's like where you went to school, and it's like, okay, it's great that I went to Carolina, or that I live in the Atlanta area, but those aren't the things that are going to drive me replying to your email. It's tying back me, my role, my experience to where I work, what's happening right now at the company. And you have to know something about who they are. You have to know your buyer in order to personalize to that. And so it's one of my favorite questions to ask people within those one-on-one coaching sessions is like, okay, you're going to send them that case study. Well, let me just break this down a little bit more. So like in that case study, what did you help that company do? Is that company similar to the person that you're reaching out to? Like you start piecing apart these things. It's like, you're really trying to get to why you're actually reaching out to the individual. And it's like, hey, I saw you work in marketing. Since you work in marketing, you're probably dealing with a certain thing at this time of year based on like how your company goes to market. And like, you actually have to like break down who this other person is on the other side. It's what makes scaling a sales thing like hard, right?
Yeah.
But if you
I gotta butt in just real quick, because you mentioned case studies. just for the salespeople listening, no one's reading your case study.
No,
I don't care if that's a cold
not at
email.
all.
I don't care if their DocuSign is in their inbox. They're not reading your case study. All right, you can go
They're
on.
not. They're not. Oh man, I get heated when people like bring me their emails and they're like, there's a hyperlink in it to like a case study that's relevant, and I'm like, how many people have actually clicked through to that? And they're like 1%, and I'm like, okay, are you a salesperson or are you a marketer? Because if you're a marketer, a 1% click through rate, you might be happy about it and you might do some adjustments to like tweak that number. But if you're a salesperson, like hopefully you're not converting between 1 and 5%. You're actually sending something that's got some meat on it, and you're trying to start a conversation. One of the things that drives me absolutely nuts in the sales world today is salespeople are acting like marketers, not salespeople, in an effort to hit output numbers. They are hawking solutions in search of a problem so that they can build a relationship on the back end. When in reality, that equation needs to be flipped, where it's like, hey, I'm trying to reach out to you and build a relationship with you. And part of that is understanding what problems you're probably facing. You've got to bring something to the table in order to get them to start to unearth problems that they're facing. And then on the latter part, hopefully you've got some solutions that you can offer up in that conversation. I have plenty of conversations where like the solution is not my own. Whether it's, probably the biggest example is email deliverability. We've got some tools within our own product that help with email deliverability. We can track for words that are likely to trigger a spam filter. But if your email domain records aren't set up correctly, or if you've been blacklisted for sending too much of the same email without any variation in the short period of time, like Google and Microsoft will flag your account, and you will start to go to spam at a high rate. Yeah. It's like, I can't help with that. Like, I can help with your content, but I can't help with this factor. And so like, here's some tools that you should look at. Here's some resources that you should go read. That is what it actually means to be a seller, is to actually understand the problems that your person is facing. Think before you sort of like regurgitate what the marketing department has told you to say.
Yeah. And if you are knowledgeable in the space of not just you and your competitors, but also adjacent technologies and other things, then if you help them with that, then when it's time, when they do have the problem that you can solve, you're the person that they call, right? Versus you trying to like, kind of force whatever problem they have into this like weird non-existent use case of your product. I just feel like as salespeople would be doing a lot better if we, help the person solve the problem. And then when it was the time where our problem or, our solution came into play, that's when we, were able to help.
Yeah. And it's funny, you asked me about my sales experience, and my first job out of college was with a group called Health Grades, where I was actually originally hired to be a salesperson for their ad sales team. It's Yelp, but for doctors and hospitals is what Health Grades is. Yep. And so they had hired me in to sell into the pharmaceutical world, selling ad space on their website. First day I show up and they're like, hey, we actually don't want you to do that. We're starting up this new revenue stream called elective providers. So all the hospital, like non-doctors, like dermatologists, dentists, etc., we want them to get more out of the site. And so we need to build a product around this. We need to grow it. We actually ended up bringing that up to I brought in, eventually became about $10 million a year as far as annual revenue. But most of that came from sitting there and understanding what it was that these folks were dealing with. And, the big challenge there was, you're not the only review site. You're not the only place where I'm trying to grow my business. You're just one of many places. And so I got the smart idea. I was like, okay, well, who is helping them grow their business? Why don't I just go to them and they can bundle that in with all the other stuff that they do? it can be a much more bigger value play. And so like reselling became like the obvious go-to-market motion for that entire business model. But it came from the fact that I wasn't trying to just like piecemeal my solution in with what they do. I was like, okay, well, what are all the things you've got to do? And I was like, okay, well, we can't go sell our competitors' products. So like, who is selling our competitors' products? And like, how do we get our position in there more effectively?
Yeah. So I'm curious. I've got a hot take for you. So you coined the name Lavender last year, right?
Yeah.
I've got a hot take on why it's called Lavender.
What do you think it is?
Okay, I think it's because most emails are, they're kind of like scratchy, they kind of like stress you out, they smell bad, they're just like kind of frustrate you. And Lavender's just like, oh, after you use us, it's like, oh, it's all calm, like you're getting all your replies and people are enjoying your emails and they feel good about it and like you're not stressed out and you're like chilling. How close am I?
Someday that will be the sexy like PR story that we tell. But no, it was actually a shower thought.
Okay.
I was another trip up to New York, sleeping on my co-founder's couch. He had moved from Atlanta to New York because we were going after direct consumer brands, and most of those live and breathe in New York City. So he had a spot in New York, Brooklyn, that he was renting. I was sleeping on his couch as we were doing some sales meetings up there, and was taking a shower. You spend enough time in the direct consumer world, you see a lot of things around like drop shipping. You see a lot of things around just like how easy it is to like spin up a brand, XYZ. So I'm staring at his roommate's body wash that's lavender scented, and I had the wild idea of, hey, direct consumer brand called Lavender. I don't know what they'd sell, but like it's a pretty good name for like an e-commerce shop. Like I bet people would
Yeah.
be like, oh, Lavender, cool. I don't know if it's like swag or like candles, but so I jumped out of the shower and I was like, hey, we should see if this domain's available. And he was like, try Lavender, it's like $9. And I was like, let's buy it, see what happens. So when he came up with when the idea sort of birthed out of this like conversation at the NYU Entrepreneur Center, we're like, well, what do we call it? We're like, well, we've got this lavender domain. Why don't we just strap it to that? We had like joked like, yeah, maybe it like makes your inbox more peaceful or something like that. But that was actually the lavender origin story. It's like it's kind of funny. Like I feel like this whole business was it's intentional in the sense of like it's actually kind of funny about the reason lavender has actually been an interesting name like longer term is it's kind of embedded into an ethos of like what you describe of like scratchy emails, everything about lavender is a pleasant thing, right?
Yeah.
And so like nobody's ever heard like lavender like, oh, it's nasty. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, that's it's like that's so pleasant, that's so peaceful, calming. So like we sort of took that to real heart, particularly around UI UX design. And we were just, my co-founder Will has been adamant about like pixel by pixel, like how things are going to lay out, how it's going to look, how it's going to be experienced, because when you're in someone's inbox, it's a very personal place. And as soon as you do something wrong, you see uninstalls like spike. It's like we quickly learned to like create a feature flag button where like if something breaks or something like messes up, we can like revert back really quick and like, okay, let's fix that before we do that again.
Damage control.
No, I still remember the day before we had that, and it was like, oh my god, what did we do? What did we do? But you start getting emails in, they're like, why is it doing this? Why is it covering that? Why is it, X, Y, and Z? And you quickly realize like, every pixel does matter. Every little tidbit does matter. And so, having an amazing designer on staff, Having a co-founder who's design obsessed has been probably one of our key differentiating factors when I look at what we do and the space that we live in.
Yeah. So we've got time for just a couple quick questions for you. So first and foremost, we're big book people, big podcast people on this show. I'm curious, like any resources that have helped you at all in life. No topics off limits. But if it's a book or a podcast or YouTube video or anything like that.
Yeah. Let me think. I've got 3 sales books that I love and hold near and dear to my heart.
All right.
First would be Spin Selling by Neil Rackham, because we as sellers don't ask enough questions. We do a lot of assuming. I see it all the time in cold email. This actually transitions into the next book that I will suggest, which is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And we actually recently implemented a U to I ratio in our product based off of this notion of Dale Carnegie's idea that you should be talking about them 80% of the time, 20% about yourself. That actually plays really well with spin selling when you think about it, because if you force yourself in an email to only talk about the other person, you realize how little you actually know. And your emails all of a sudden get a lot skinnier. They get a lot simpler, and you ask really good questions that tie back to things that they're trying to accomplish that you could probably help them with. And then the last book that I suggest is a group. It's called How to Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. If you're, are you familiar with like 5-factor personality models?
Nope.
Okay. So there's a personality.
Teach me.
So there's 5 factors of personality. There's stability traits and plasticity traits. Think of plasticity as your desire for change. So like openness to new experiences is one. Extroversion is another one. That one requires a little less explanation. But there's a stability trait known as agreeableness. And you could almost think about it as like how much you care about what other people think. You could also think about it as your propensity to think about other people before you think about the task at hand. If you've heard of like DISC personality trait analysis, Crystal Knows is a great company that's done some great work in that. It's just your extroversion, flip the cross with your agreeableness traits. And so, this agreeableness trait, I rank really highly for it. I think about other people and their opinions probably more than I ever should. And so this book, How to Pitch Anything, basically just like slams the notion of like, stop caring, stop worrying, stop thinking about what other people think. Use these power dynamics to like get your mindset right when it comes to what it is and like how to sell, because so much of selling is confidence and just like truly believing in what it is that you're pitching. And so like that book for me was a big eye opener. And so when I talk to other folks and like I get the sense that like they have that worry, they're thinking about what other people think, I always tell them to read that book, because I'm like, it's going to give you like a perspective that you probably hadn't thought about, but it talks about some of the things that we actually embed into the product around like it gets into some of the neuroscience behind why simple emails work. It gets into some of the neuroscience behind like why a more brash approach can be more effective sometimes. For me, like I love to understand the why behind things. I'm a little bit more analytical in that regard. So it was a super helpful, eye-opening book for me on that regard.
Yep. Awesome. Well, those are 3 great resources for folks. I did want to give a quick shout out. I was doing some research before the interview to your site, and my pal Lauren Frilling with the quote on the Lavender site.
Yeah, dude, Lauren's great.
So give her a quick shout out.
Dude, Lauren, amazing. But she has been, she's given us some fantastic feedback on the product. So big kudos to Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely. Will, this is a blast, man. Is there anything that we didn't get to?
Let's see. Yeah, maybe one last parting thing would just be if I have to give anybody some advice when
hit him with it.
Writing,
hit him, Will. Come on.
It's simplify, shorten, ask questions, and don't be afraid to send a 2 to 3 line email if it's focused around a specific question. I think we get a little wrapped up in trying to over clarify, particularly for your younger audience that is coming out of school and they've been trained over and over again about how to be more complex in their writing, how to be more thorough, how to write this 5-page essay when in reality all you needed was a couple paragraphs that explained why you believed a certain thing. This academic mindset behind writing, we have to unlearn it in order to be an effective emailer.
I love it. If people want to learn more about Lavender, if they want to hit you up, chat with you, what's the best place to do that?
Well, LinkedIn is a fantastic way to get in touch with me. The other would be to just shoot me an email, of course. will.allred@trylavender.com. I respond to literally every single email I get. Even if it's a shitty cold pitch, I will reply and let you know why it's a bad pitch. But the other way to get a sense for Lavender is just try it. It comes with a week free trial. So you can go to our website at trylavender.com and give it a shot, and reach out if you've got any questions, of course.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, coming fresh off the honeymoon, very gracious with your time. So I appreciate it, Will.
Tom, I appreciate you having me on, man.
Thanks. All right. Thank you everyone so much for checking out that podcast, especially if you're in the middle of cleaning the dishes, mowing the lawn, taking a nap, whatever it is that you're doing, multitasking while you're listening to this. I appreciate you. Again, shout out to Gong, shout out to Postal. It's the last month of the quarter. Let's get after it, people. And please hit me up on social media. I'm Tommy Tahoe everywhere. Tom Alemo on LinkedIn, and review this podcast, subscribe, show some love. Peace.